Oh, we started.
So we're up now?
Yeah, apparently.
Okay, well, welcome to the Thrive Podcast. Today we're going to be doing stuff. Was that good for an intro?
We need to introduce each of us.
You're not supposed to ask.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think I'm the right person to introduce everyone because, to be honest, I am not sure what everyone's role inside the Thrive game is. I'm not even sure what my role is because I have a very confusing life.
Same. I guess we should all introduce ourselves. Yes, that's what I meant.
Probably a good idea.
All right,
Yeah,
so,
a lot of people get.
Seregon, you first, I guess.
All right, everyone, I'm Seregon. I'm one of the theorists on the Thrive team. I think you probably see me here a couple of weeks ago when we did the last stream. So, who's next?
I guess I can go. I'm Monty. I do lots of videos on Thrive, and I'm also one of the programmers on the team.
Hi, I'm Oliveriver, or Oliver. I do the sound, some graphics, and some outreach. And I was also here last time, and did the intro last time.
Should I go?
Probably.
Okay. Hi, I'm Narotiza. I'm a graphics artist. I mainly do vectors and icons and stuff.
Hi, I'm Atrox. This is my first podcast. I was not here last time. I do concept arts every once in a while when I get the chance to. But mostly what I do is I just moderate the forum, so that's why I'm here.
And what about those who will be typing?
Well, we've got hhyyrylainen to introduce himself first as well.
Oh yeah. Duh.
Hi, I'm the programmers. I do there's something. I'm the.
And then typing, we have crodnu and minegamer. Crodnu being a programmer, minegamer being an aspiring artist on the team.
Yeah, I gotta admit that concept for the organism editor was pretty cool. Is pretty cool.
Okay, I think that's everyone.
Yeah, you have crodnu and hhyyrylainen here who are the actual programmers, and then you have me, the script kiddie.
So, if you were here last time, you kind of know how this works, in that we kind of talk about things, kind of answer the questions of the chat, and generally be very professional. If you want, but this time, we're also going to try streaming the game at some point, because this time hhyyrylainen is doing the streaming for us, and he has it set up so that we can have the game streamed live for you, and also your own text in the YouTube chat is right beside our own. So now you know how far long ago we were in the chat. So you don't scream at us for taking so long to answer your questions anymore.
I'm hearing a bit of echoing. Not really echoing, but occasional background noise from your mic, Atrox.
Background noise, like what?
Occasionally there's a bit of a...
I think it's just the static from the mic. Noise, you know.
Might be the fan. Let me turn it off.
Okay.
All right. Shall we? If you guys in the chat want to start posting some questions, hhyyrylainen, do you want to launch the game and start showing it off a little bit, and people can ask questions as you go through it?
The chat be on.
Leave the YouTube chat up.
Oh man, this game looks pretty cool. I bet the developers of this game are pretty cool people.
No, I'm not sure about them personally. I think they're biting off too much for them. Biting off more than they can chew. I don't think it's going to work.
I think the developers could do better with this game. I think they could, implement some features like underwater civilizations.
Oh God, no.
Like the ability to play as a parasite.
They should add wheels.
Oh yeah. Giving wheels because like Cilia too boring. We need something like wheels to make your microbes turn faster.
This is off to a great start.
Thrive memes right at the beginning. Oh, lovely.
So
yeah, I do have to say that the GUI this time it is a lot cleaner, and I do like that.
It does look really nice. I haven't been able to play it myself, but wow.
I'm responsible for that, so thanks. And yeah, I'm quite happy with it. I've decided from now on I'm not going to do any more work on it in the future. Next time he's updating, someone else is doing it, someone who actually knows what they're doing.
I think that's you at this point.
Unfortunately, yes, but yeah, I kind of had to teach myself a bit of Lua along the way to get it all working, and I needed help from all the programmers, but somehow it all worked, and you've got what you see in front of you now, and also what's in the editor, and even a pause menu now, thankfully.
Pause it. Pause the game so we can see it. Lovely.
And there's nice help text and things.
Beautiful.
Oliver, I remember that you were trying to get the compound bars along the bottom edge of the GUI. Did you ever manage to do that?
No. Well, the idea with that is the player will choose a couple of compounds that they want to see all the time. So maybe their cell is focused towards photosynthesis, in which case their carbon dioxide stores would be quite important, or something. And then they'd select those and they'd be visible in the lower bar all the time. But I didn't have any idea how to code that, so it's not in at the moment.
Gotcha.
For some reason, I keep thinking that thinking of the thing being along the lower part of the screen being not like the compounds, but sort of like as weird it sounds, like a spore progress bar.
Like the
That's it's like a really dumb idea, but
like as you collect DNA, the bar gets further and you get bigger and.
yeah.
But we don't really have any sort of in it at the moment.
Yeah, that's because there's nothing really. We don't have that concurrency in the game, so.
I think there was once a concept of having the reproduction bar actually along the bottom edge.
Yeah.
It might work there. We don't really have a reproduction bar as such at the moment because, well, it was originally going to be the editor button filling up as you got closer to being able to reproduce, but once again, I had no idea how to do that. So
right now, the quote-unquote reproduction meter is just monitoring your microbe to see if it splits, if the organelles split, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I think that's all background stuff that the creator's been working on. And the creator, by the way, he was meant to be here, but he's rather ill at the moment, so can't join us.
He has terminal illness.
I hope not. We need him to finish the game for us.
Yeah. Let me tell you that the first time I played a release of 0.3.3 and because I had forgotten that the organelle split. So when I started growing more flagella, I started freaking out because I forgot that was supposed to happen. Oh, I didn't know that the organelles shrunk when you lost HP.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that design decision person. I think it's a bit weird. I see the logic behind it, but I think it would be better to have them change models as they go on to like more damaged models of themselves.
We have a few questions in the chat. We want to answer those. First one by Creeper Gel is when are we expecting, like in how many years would you estimate would we begin work on the next stage?
Do any of the programmers have any idea about that? Because it seems to be we just do it whenever it comes at the moment.
Yeah,
whenever we finish the micro stage.
I think at the current pace we're going at, I would say around a year or two. Considering that, I mean, we're going at a pretty quick pace comparatively. But don't like quote me on it. Don't take my word as the word of God.
I think if we keep up our current pace, that's reasonable. But we're all hoping things speed up the further we get along. So maybe sooner. Yeah. Maybe 2 years. Maybe a bit later.
Okay. Next question. I guess for either all of us or for Oliver. What was it that bugged you about the old GUI design? I really like the cell shapes of the buttons. I thought it was quite an iconic design.
It wasn't very good at using space intelligently, and although the design was iconic, it was in no way regular at all. It was all just random, and it annoyed me the way I'd done it.
It was a pre-design. It wasn't a functional design.
Exactly. And I'm not saying this is perfectly functional either, because we have had some criticism about this one already. But I think it's a whole lot better than it was before. So I don't know. Maybe, as I've said, I'm not going to be the one working on it next time. So if we get someone who's really good at vector graphics in general, maybe they could come up with something that combines them in some way.
Yeah. The next one is from William Koch. When is the latest you can leave the oceans before the timescale excludes evolution as a factor? In other words, I understand the problems with aquatic civilizations, but how late can you leave it?
The idea is that we're never going to force you to leave any stage, so you can stay as long as you like. In terms of how far you can progress without leaving the oceans, I think we've all largely agreed that Stone Age society should be possible. It's just that advanced technology won't be.
So I guess the consensus is like you can have an underwater civilization, quote unquote, but it won't be more than a collection of tribes at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, stone huts, tribal traditions.
I still think though that
like the Tarihi.
Considering the oceans are kind of chaotic, like what they're asking pretty much is like how late in the game, how late into our species evolution would we actually be able to maybe change our minds and go to land. So considering how like chaotic and how many factors there are underwater, maybe they would still be subject to evolution. Who knows? Because a lot of the no, never mind. I don't remember where I'm going with this. It was like a lot of the technology that we have now because of because of metalworking and stuff is what also aided in us not needing to deal with the elements and not needing to adapt to fit our environment. So that wouldn't really happen underwater. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's something to be sort of thought about more, but the idea is always not to force the player to do any particular thing, if at all possible.
Yeah, you could spend several days in the cell stage. You could spend a week in the, in the multicellular stage. I think if we were to answer your question, like I don't think that the evolution, the timescale of evolution only stops to affect you once you enter a societal stage. So if your underwater creatures do enter the Stone Age, then the timescale of evolution won't be a factor anymore. Am I correct in this?
It'll be
I
very,
believe
very
so.
slow.
Negligible though.
If you want to leave the oceans after you've reached the Stone Age, you'll probably have to find some technological way of doing so, which might be difficult.
Yeah,
Honestly, we've not
Could you,
thought about that.
Could your creatures if
You
there
could
are
relax.
underwater creatures that evolved on your planet that store air or store water inside of them, could it be possible that your creature could find a way to go on land using some sort of like apparatus, primitive apparatus, like with creatures and leatherworking and that sort of thing?
We had all this discussion, or rather, other people had all this discussion on the old forum, and the consensus every time was it always came back to having metalworking as a prerequisite. So
True, and leatherworking wouldn't exactly be possible underwater, so
exactly.
So that's something that needs to be thought about some more, but quite possibly underwater Stone Age could be a bit of a dead end. Because you won't have the tech to build yourself some sort of breathing suit.
unless some advanced civilization from the stars came down and gave you a breathing suit.
Yeah, uplifting by some other civilization is always an option.
That'd be really clunky on land though.
How would uplifting work, really? Like, how would the process happen and stuff?
We don't know.
We actually had a discussion about this in the Discord, and we said something about like if the aliens were to give the player like I guess blowtorches, they would be able to not necessarily work the metal, but cut out shapes from it of what they need with the blowtorch. Just some speculation.
Yeah,
from a technical standpoint, the uplifting process could just work by the civilization gives your little group of underwater creatures strategic resources and technology on whatever technology tree we have.
Yeah, it's going to be something along the lines of, if you imagine a civilization style tech tree, where metalworking is a prerequisite for all advanced technologies, and you can't metalwork underwater, some civilization trades you a tech which bypasses metalworking in some way, and that allows you to progress.
Oh, we just jump over it. Okay.
Something like that. But that's all we know at the moment. There's no point getting into specifics until you even have a tech tree.
That sounds like a good idea.
I feel like we've gone.
Yeah, shall we move on to a different question?
I feel like
Yeah.
we've gone
Yeah.
in incredible amounts of track here.
Yeah.
We've
Do you think there could be an alternative to organelle splitting? Organelle splitting stops you from customizing your cell. Instead, could you just save up amino acids?
Well, the creator would be the one to answer that, since he was the one who put organelle splitting in, but he's not here at the moment. So,
Next question.
can someone else try?
I guess like organelle splitting, storing up amino acids would just work how it used to, where build compound, store it, and then when you get X amount of compounds, you split. But honestly, I think from an accurate representation of cell reproduction and from a gameplay point of view, it's a nice visual way of letting the without having to look at any bars or compound lists. It's just a nice visual way of letting the player know when they are going to
Well, regarding the realism of that, I do remember there was a forum member who made a comment that cells don't really spend most of their lives slowly dividing their organelles. Usually, it's done in a relatively quick process, I guess.
That is true. So I guess the only way we'd be able to fix that is if we changed it so when you get over when you get a really high number of compounds, then you could start reproducing. But I don't see that happening anytime in the future.
So that might be something you trigger once you've got the stored compounds, which might be an interesting gameplay element, because then you're suddenly bloatings are twice your size and it might make you vulnerable. But the system as it is with the splitting compounds, which a fair few people have complained about because it affects your aesthetics, it's not final. It's just something we're trying out.
Next question.
I've just seen one from Mirror Monkey. When 0.2.3 was released, you said you would increase outreach. Are we, the community, allowed to spread the word? And is there any concrete outreach plan?
That's your territory, Oliver.
Yeah, so we have said in the past that, yeah, you can spread the word if you want, but we would like you to be careful about not misrepresenting the game. Because we've said it several times and people still don't seem to understand, this is not Spore 2. So if you go around parading that some people are making Spore 2, yes, it might get a lot of attention, but it's not really going to be very accurate, and those people are likely to be quite disappointed by what they see. So if you're willing to present us more as a sort of, for the fun of it, passion project, developing an evolution simulator game, then yeah, go ahead, but be careful, please.
Yeah, the difference between us and Spore is that Spore was more arcadey. In the words of Will Wright, it was more a collection of minigames than a cohesive evolution simulator.
And as for outreach plans, the other day we were subreddit of the day, which was quite a big thing. It got us a small amount of attention, but not really very much. But we're planning to do maybe some of the sorts of things like that. It was quite a while ago they said it, but we had some YouTubers say they might want to take a look at our game, but we haven't heard back from them in a while, so we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think we've been saving some of the bigger things like getting YouTubers to play it until there's a playable game, and we're getting pretty close to that stage now where the game is actually fun to play around with for 10-20 minutes.
And
with some balancing, I could see it being fun to play, but I don't see it really being like a it's not much of like a game right now because there's no real objective.
No, it is pretty much a tech demo at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, close to that. I don't think we're there yet.
Well, at the same time, it is a kind of a catch-22 situation where we can't present it because it's not good enough, but we can't make it good enough until we present it and get more people involved. And at some point we just have to say, why not just post r/gaming on Reddit and get 1 million people see it? And there are obvious downsides to that, but at some point there's being downsides and the good points are going to start outweighing it. So
no, what I meant is advertising it to the community that way is good. Getting a YouTuber to play it, we won't name the people we've offered to. That's something we can possibly only do once, and that's best done when there's a good video to be made out of it.
How complex are the publishers be? What do you mean? Daniel Rodriguez Gill.
The publishers?
He probably means editors. Well, he clarifies that someone asked if you'll be able to choose what biome you play in. That's definitely the plan. The biomes that are there at the moment are really just the first introduction of biomes to the engine. There's a lot more we want to do with them.
I think the biome you play in will be determined by how you've evolved and adapted species.
Not exactly. Say you start a new game. This is a way down the line, once a few versions away. You'll choose the biome you start in, and eventually you'll be able to move between biomes, and that'll give you a challenge in what you're going to be adapted to. but whether the game will automatically move you between them, I'm not sure.
Anyone want to answer any more of the questions, or should we get on with talking about where we're going next with gameplay and evolution and such?
I think there's one more question by Jammy Gamer. It's how will creatures evolve? Would they grow limbs based on surroundings, or can you build a creature like in Spore?
It's kind of both, because your own creature, you're building it yourself, but everything else is happening automatically. So in a way, it's kind of evolution and intelligent design going on at the same time.
Yeah, I think the real distinction from Spore is while you will have a lot of control over the way you build your creature, it'll have a lot more effect on how well it can survive. So where Spore, you can build a completely bizarre creature and have it work just fine. You'll have to put more thought into what's going to work in the environment you're playing in.
And also, all the other creatures will evolve alongside you, unlike Spore.
Well, they had.
Atrox, you just started talking and then cut out.
I'm trying to fix the sensitivity. I don't. Okay, but anyway, they had those cocoon things that would evolve, I guess.
Yeah, but they were more like they were more just spawning in new creatures when the old ones got too weak.
Plus, you hardly ever see the cocoon thing. I never even realized that was what was going on.
I didn't realize until like I saw them, and I was like very confused. Stood there and watched. Anyway, I think we're getting new questions. Is this working? Yeah, okay.
So Mirror Monkey asks again about biomes. Excuse me. This is a long way off before we really need to even implement this kind of thing. But ideally speaking, there will be a planet generated, which will divide naturally into oceans and terrestrial and mountains. And sort of a mix of different things are going to go on. Simple geography is going to say, here's a shallow sea, here's a deep sea, here's a beach, here's a mainland, here's a mountain. But all of that's going to get fed into by the actual evolution side of it, the biology side of it. Where are your plants going to be able to grow? What's going to develop into something which looks like a grassland or a forest or a rainforest? So it should all be fairly dynamic, but this is a long way off. What you should expect to see soon-ish, as in the next year, is a variety of primordial supertype biomes. Some of them will be light, some of them will be dark, some of them might have volcanic vents producing minerals.
And we do have pseudo biomes right now, but they're more just backgrounds.
Yeah,
well, actually, I didn't realize this until recently, but crodnu changed the code so there are different densities of compounds depending on which biome you're in. It's quite a small change, but we can legitimately say there are different biomes.
Yeah, if you play now, the backgrounds will be different, and depending on the background, you get different levels of compounds, which makes some of them incredibly difficult and some of them not quite so bad. But that's really just the feature's been implemented, but we haven't done anything with it yet beyond that.
Could we possibly explain a little more about that, or would you rather let the players figure that out?
Explain about what exactly?
Like why some of them are harder than others. You were saying that.
So I think what's different at the moment is a mix of compounds available, and because you need glucose, oxygen, and ammonia to survive and reproduce, if you have not enough glucose or oxygen, you're going to run out of ATP, run out of energy, and die off. So depending on the compound mix available, it's harder or easier to survive.
And eventually when the player starts the game, when we have an options menu in, they'll be able to choose the biome they start in. I presume. I'm not sure what everyone else's opinion on that is, but I think that's probably we can be fairly confident that's going to be one of the options.
At some point, we may eventually build a different system, but certainly that'll be an option sooner than the system is complete.
And if, when they're choosing a biome, it gives them information about prevalence of compounds, each different compound in there, then they'll be able to decide. It's kind of tied into different, so they can choose their own difficulty.
Will there be camouflages and different types of visions and blind creatures?
This is something we've discussed more than a few times, and we all really like the idea of having
Gronked up
different
senses?
kinds of... Sorry?
We on the dev forums they were called gronked up senses.
That's one of the threads, yeah. Having different spectrums of vision and having different ways of displaying information to the player other than the way we see as humans. And even possibly blind creatures which can only smell and hear, and we don't know how much fun it would be. It would be kind of cool. So we'll probably play with that at some point. But
We definitely
how
have to make
far-
it more. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, how far we go into that depends on whether it's actually fun to play with. Go on, Monty.
I think like if we do implement it, we're going to have to make it quite a bit different than Spore's version of having no senses.
I don't know how Spore did it.
Spore, if you remove this,
If you had no eyes, everything just became dark. There's like I think it decreased the saturation and then made the edges of your screen dark, and that's it.
But I don't know. All I can promise is we'll have a go, see what we can do. But obviously, the extreme of that, the cell stage as is, you shouldn't be able to see a thing. All you realistically, the only information your cell is getting is when it bumps into stuff. So, if we went all the way down that path, what you would see in this current cell stage is an outline of your cell which glowed whenever something bumped into you. And it might glow a color if you're bumping into a compound cloud you do or don't want. But the rest of the screen would be black. Which is a cool idea, but maybe not that much fun.
I
Yeah.
would play that, honestly.
For a while, yeah.
We could have it as an option game, super hard mode.
Super realistic, yeah.
Could be a setting before you start the game. It can be turned on or off throughout.
We're going to have a very long list of options.
yeah, should we get on to games now, or do you guys still want to answer questions?
Well, we've been answering questions for a while. I think we could move on to some of the topics we had planned this time.
Yeah, we'll answer questions as they come up, but should we move on to where do we want to start?
Well, I should just mention, if you're enjoying this kind of discussion and asking questions, then on the community forums, we decided to start creating threads about interesting discussion topics, not necessarily related to development at the moment. So it could be about something in the microbe stage or something far off in the future. And conversation in them is going to be held to a higher standard than in the other places, because we kind of want to create an environment of enjoyable discussion both for you and for us, and we will try and get involved in those as well. Currently, the only one up there of these new threads is one I started on the behavior editor, which I will post a link to in the chat now. So you can join in there, or some of us will be creating other threads about similar topics at some point. I think Seregon said he wanted to do one on the compounds, population dynamics, and auto-evo system. So look out for those if you want more of this kind of discussion that you can be involved in.
Yeah, so these will go up every few weeks, every month or so, depending on how much activity they get and if they run out of steam. And there'll be good places to talk to us, and they might lead to us, the way we design the game, obviously, but also to discussions on live streams and podcasts and other feedback.
Okay, so some of the topics we've got here, we've got discussed the latest release. We've kind of done that with the GUI already, but is there anything else people want to discuss about that? Maybe?
Have we? I don't think. Have we talked about the random mutations?
We did mention them briefly about how they're not a proper evolution system.
So the way it works now, which I think is crodnu's work again, so you can explain a bit more of this in the chat, is other cells are created with a random collection of organelles. And I don't know if they evolve new sets of organelles or if they just are generated once. crodnu will have to clarify that. But again, as with the biomes, this is just the first step to implementing this system to what we actually want it to do, where the microbes evolve in response to the environment and to you.
And the whole system that we have planned behind how evolution will work is a whole lot more complicated than that. And Seregon and TJ Well are the experts on that.
Yeah, and this is what we call the CPA system, the compounds, population dynamics and auto-evo systems, which there seems to be some interest in having it laid out in detail, which we will try and do somehow. But it's possibly an overwhelming amount of information to put in one place.
Well, I think it would be useful both for the fans and for future developers. If people want to come along and program part of the evolution system, it would be useful to have it all laid out for them.
Yeah.
Rather than the way it is now, where it's kind of half in some people's heads and half on forums and stuff, and nobody really knows what the proper way of doing it is.
That includes me and TJ Whale. Yeah, it needs to be centralized for that sake, but to have it explained to the community in an interesting way, which is not just an info dump, will take some work.
But if you guys are interested in that, then look out for it. It'll be coming soon. Who knows?
So that might be one of the community forum threads we start. A more likely one, which we've been discussing the last couple of days, is sort of on the topic of microbes being randomly generated and having too many toxin organelles and being difficult to deal with, and biomes being somewhat randomly generated and also too difficult or too easy. We're kind of getting to the stage where it might be possible to start setting up parameters for these things, setting up options, so that you can, without having to be a developer, tweak a few options and make compounds more or less common, make certain organelles work in different ways, and start to change the way the game plays, and effectively start modeling it, start trying to make it more fun to play with the systems that are there now. Okay, one vote for an info dump.
I'd like to see an info dump. I don't know about anyone else.
Well, there's the wiki page of the old population dynamics post. I'm going to try and find that.
And some other things we've been discussing in private a couple of times, speculating about stuff like combat for the cell stage. I think TJ Well wants to make it quite a bit like Dark Souls. I'm not sure everyone wants that, but maybe due to different difficulty options.
I think he might be in the minority on that one.
Yeah, there could be different options for having that. So you could have it really hard Dark Souls style, or a lot easier. And you could even play in a way that doesn't really involve combat. You could be a plant cell.
And these again are things which could easily be changed by a configuration file. How fast can you move? How quickly can you turn? Can you strafe with a certain number of flagella? And these are quick and easy ways of changing the gameplay to be more fast and fluid, or to be more ponderous, or more strategic, or more or less involved with the compound system versus just the way you play. So we're kind of interested to see how many different ways there are of playing the game, or setting the game up to be played, and what people prefer.
I think I would honestly prefer, I think I would honestly prefer, I think I would prefer a more skill-based combat system, like Dark Souls. Kind of hard, you know.
Okay, here's a link for the people who want an info dump.
Everybody braces.
Yeah, this is, I don't know, probably half an hour's reading. This is also from a couple of years ago. A few details of how the system work have changed and are still being decided. But this is kind of the idea of how it should work. But as it turns out, it's not quite going to work that way.
I see some people are discussing programming languages in the chat, C++ and Lua. And in actual fact, hhyyrylainen's been updating some of the code recently to run. I'm not sure exactly how. Is it a faster way of running Lua? Care to elaborate on that? If he's here.
Not sure he is. I've not heard him. Oh,
Apparently.
if you are here, Helena, we can't hear you talking.
No, we haven't heard you talking. Must be some weirdness in the again.
I have to go, guys. I will be right back in a second.
Alright, see ya.
I'm not sure whether hhyyrylainen is still talking or not. That's why I'm not saying anything. Seems we've got some connection.
All right, sorry, Helena, if you are talking. Kind of don't know what's going on.
Chat, let us know if you can hear people talking simultaneously, because it might help here.
All right. can hear you.
Yay!
Yeah, you're
Now
back.
you can. No.
So do you want to talk about programming languages and what you're trying to do to speed things up by moving stuff to C++ and other stuff to Lua?
I hope.
Any comment on, do we want to try and use Java? I don't think we do. I don't know how difficult, I imagine quite difficult it is to make C++ and Java work together.
Someone says they have no sound, they don't know what's going on. Oh, I hear some British man. They love your voice, apparently, Seregon.
I'm not British. You are.
Yeah, I'm the most British one here. Seregon is slightly Dutch.
Right, so I'm not sure whose voice you like. Probably not mine.
Well, I wasn't talking then, so I assume you mean something else.
Right, shall we move on?
Yeah.
Yes, let's.
5 minutes of awkwardness over, hopefully.
So anything anyone else wants to talk about, or should we go back to answering some questions?
Yeah, start posting questions if you want to. Yeah, Nova Gaming, I think it is not impossible, but not worth the effort to use C++ and Java. There's nothing to be gained there. Also, Java is a pretty terrible language for programming games. I've gone through all my notes of stuff we wanted to talk about.
Shoot.
On the topic of modability, exposing things like the way flagella work, which crodnu says we can already do, and the biome setup and the way different organelles work. What other things that are already in the game, not new systems which we have planned, but what that's already in the game that affects gameplay, would you like to see be moddable? And would you like to start playing with? Those of you who have, you don't need any programming language, just a willingness to look in a few configuration files and change a few values and play around with it. I'm the guy who's Dutch. I don't know how I sound French or Dutch or whatever.
Mr. Nick's Cake asked why I'm no longer Beethoven. Assuming that's not a comment on my declining standards of music recently. I just changed my profile picture everywhere because I'm tired of being someone who has an overbearingly aggressive profile picture when I'm not a particularly overbearingly aggressive person. So my profile picture is now, I don't know how to describe him. A slightly pensive Gustav Mahler, who is another composer who I quite like, and you should totally listen to his music. So that answers that question, which isn't really a very important question, but there you go.
It all goes silent.
Well, we could talk about features for the next release, I guess, if anyone who's actively working on it knows.
Sounds like a good idea.
I have returned. What is happening?
Oh, that's why it
Nothing
was
much.
quiet.
What?
It's all going wrong. We were just about to start talking about possible features for the next release. So
I think bacteria was one of them.
Yeah, we do need bacteria eventually.
we've got a couple of bacteria models floating around, but it's the actual programming of them that's important. So I personally don't know how they're going to work, to be honest. If the creator was here, he'd be able to answer, but he's not. So I don't think we can really give a very good answer to that.
Fortunately.
I wrote a few concepts for them in the dev forums. I don't know if that's relevant at all.
Oh, it is. Just
It's pretty relevant.
Yeah. What do you
Let me find it. You're gonna hear typing. I'm sorry. Should I just post a link? Because it's a lot that I wrote.
Yeah, might as well. Either, well, probably in the YouTube chat so people can click it.
Yeah.
I can't post links.
I think I was.
Okay, post it somewhere else in Discord and I'll put it in there for you.
Who's wanting to post a link? Atrox.
Me.
Yeah, only moderators can post links in the YouTube chat. So
Atrox, if you post something else in the YouTube chat, I'll make you a moderator.
Posted hello.
There you go. Mr. Nixcake asks, what's the biggest weakness of the team and the sort of development as it is now? For the longest time, it's been that we're far better at generating ideas and designing the game than we are at actually implementing it, because there's only so many people on the team who can program and have the skill to build those ideas. So that's always progressed quite slowly. But I think it's fair to say that over the last couple of years, that's gotten better and better. We have more active programmers now than I think we've ever had.
Definitely.
considering the pace that we're going at right now in comparison to the pace that we used to go at, I think we're doing much, much better than we did before.
Yeah, and it's getting better all the time. So it's less of a weakness. One of the other issues we have is that all of us work on this for free in our free time. So there are times of year which are especially quiet. Anytime people have exams on, the holidays can go either way. Half the team can be away at the same time, and all development stops, and it looks to the rest of the internet as if we've died for a few months, whereas actually we're all just busy.
And we have gotten into the bad habit over the past year or so of using private methods of communication a bit more than we do public. So I think in future we need to make sure we post more to the development forums and in these new discussion threads on the community forums.
Agreed.
Because hopefully that will make it seem as if there's more activity going on, and then more people might be inspired to get involved. Because if you're watching this at some point in the future, and there's not been much activity recently in our public places, then I will say we are still going, but probably quite quietly for a bit until more of our main programmers return.
Yeah.
Unless we all die in a week or something. I don't know.
Hopefully that doesn't happen.
I think 5 would be the least of anyone's worries if that happened. Yeah, and these live streams and the podcasts we've promised but haven't yet done, and the threads on the community forums are all part of sort of remedying the fact that sometimes it looks like we're very inactive, whereas actually there's just not that much to show sometimes. Sometimes it's slow.
And sometimes we tend to spend a long time working on very small features. Well, not small features, but features that don't have the biggest visible impact. It's like for a while, well, one of the biggest bugs from the test release recently was a memory leak. And it took quite a while to fix that, and apparently it's still not fixed on Linux. So, people won't have seen that as a very big feature at the time, but it was something that programmers were working on quite actively.
William Koch asks, if and when later stages become available, can you choose to start in the later ones? As ever, that's a long time away, but yes, you should be able to start wherever you like. Possibly that'll be by loading up a creature which you or someone else has made that's partway through a stage. Possibly will have some sort of generic default creature to start a stage off with. And related to that, how will the transitions between stages work? Our aim is to have them as smooth as possible, in the sense that, ideally speaking, there will be no loading screen. There will be a gradual change of perspective. We don't know how possible that is. That could technically be very difficult to do.
Mr. Nick's Cake has just asked a follow-up question. What steps are you guys taking to expand the team and speed up workflow? What is there that the community can do to help? Anyone else have any opinion on that, or should I answer?
I could say something. The one guy who I tried to help last. So I think there might.
Yeah, the more people we get joining the team and trying to build a game, the better we can make that experience of doing it for the first time. Especially on Linux, hhyyrylainen is pretty much the only person working on Linux at the moment. So we've not had the opportunity to teach many people how to make it work on Linux. So if you have a reasonable amount of programming knowledge or know someone who does, who's interested, send them our way. And yeah, that's what we're doing to make it, to help the team grow. That's one of the biggest things we need to do, is make it easier to join the team and get started. And bit by bit, we're doing that.
As for what the community can do to help, apparently people can't hear. There was lag and people can't hear most of an answer from someone.
Should
That was hhyyrylainen, I
Probably.
think.
So he was talking about someone who joined, well, not joined, but helped try to figure out how to build the game, and then disappeared afterwards, very close to having done it. And basically, we think the best way to get more people to join the team permanently is to speed up that process in some way, make it easier for people to build the game.
Okay, I'm being there's some things going around on in my house right now, so I'll be back in just a minute. But I think
Understood.
I think when it comes to the expansion of the team, it's just, yeah, it's like what you guys were saying. It's building problems. It's just like being there. I think if we built like a dedicated like section of people, or like not really like that's the only thing they did, but we just had a group of people who volunteered to help anyone who needed building help.
At the moment, that's kind of half what the programmers are doing, which isn't very efficient when they want to be programming the game. So it might be difficult to find people willing to do that.
Yeah.
I do get the feeling we've always had a problem that's stopping us from going, and we solve those problems. Every few months we've solved one problem and it's on to a lesser problem. So we're in a much better situation than we have been before now. The fact we're actually getting programmers joining at a rate that is hard to keep up with effectively is a good thing.
And as for what the community can do to help, it's kind of what I said earlier, spread the word, but do so in a, realistic fashion. Because, we want more people to join the team, and we now feel the game is at a stage where it's not a complete turn-off to anyone who sees it. We have solid progress to show. It's not just concept art and stuff. So hopefully, if we do have a load of people arrive at some point in the future, possibly as a result of a fan posting somewhere, then we're more prepared for it now than we ever have been.
So now what?
Anyone found any interesting questions in the chat?
Shoot, I haven't really been looking much.
I think we're running short of questions. So yeah, last call to people in the chat. Any other things you want us to talk about? Be they questions or another topic? Do you want us to talk more about the discussion threads or about the release or anything else? I never did get any answers to what you would like us to make moddable. What would you like to see done with the gameplay?
Atrox, don't ask why. Don't ask about organic wheels. I know that's you. In the meantime, who is this Atrox? I would like to ask if there's anyone who's applied recently who hasn't gotten a reply, because our email application system seems to be a bit temperamental, and I'm worried we're missing people quite often. So if you applied recently and didn't get a reply from us, try again or contact us via some other means, because we would hate it if we missed out on you because of the email system not working.
So Mirror Monkey asks a question which I missed earlier. When population dynamics are implemented, will there have to be a map? Eventually, yes, there will be a map, but population dynamics can work in the single biome that you're playing in as well, where it will just control the proportions of the different cells you run across, and the way they interact, to whether they're predatory to each other. That's all part of population dynamics. So we'll be building that first before we get to a map of interconnected patches, of interconnected biomes. Once we get to that, then we're a long way towards actually having a full planet. And yes, there will.
Sorry.
When the mic up stage is done, there will be a planet generated where you pick a part of it to play on. But again, that's not necessary for the mic up stage, but it's necessary to tie into the rest of the game.
Yeah, because I don't think the CPA or Auto Evo or any of the other systems would work without biomes.
Not so much, no. Daniel Rodriguez Gill asks, will there be changes to the biomes? I did kind of say this earlier. The biomes will be somewhat dynamic, especially depending on plant life. If plant life evolves to grow rainforest in a particular geography, that'll change the kind of biomes which appear in different environments. I'm not sure what you mean by evolving space bodies.
Here's a fun question.
I think when he says space bodies, I think he means like planets and stuff.
I think you just interrupted Atrox there.
Oh,
you did.
Sorry.
That's fine.
sorry.
No, it's cool. Continue with what you were saying because I was gonna get to the question.
No, it was just really quick. I was saying it. I think it applies to planets.
Oh, okay. Well, fun question. Do you plan to allow the player to be cannibalistic?
That's with everything we don't know, but I don't see why not. I mean, if there's a dead organism lying around somewhere and you need to eat some meat of some kind, then I guess you can. There's nothing going to stop you.
In previous releases, weren't you able to weren't you able to run into your own species every once in a while? Or am I thinking of?
You weren't able to run to your species. You were able to run to default microbe.
Ah,
There's a lot of interesting ecology around cannibalism. General cannibalism, killing and eating other members of your species, is bad. It doesn't do you any good. But in specific circumstances, if you're scavenging or if you're wiping out a litter of offspring which isn't yours, then it gives your genes a competitive advantage, which is still bad for the species but good for the individual. How we model it so that cannibalism isn't a terrible idea, which it kind of is anyway, might take some effort, and it might not be the right thing. We missed a question by Daniel Battery Stapler. Would it be worth doing the modding in a config file, or would going into Lua code and changing the numbers be better? If you want to go into Lua and do it, you can do it, but putting them in config files makes it easier for people to see what they're changing and makes it less likely that they're going to break anything.
You also don't have to learn Lua to do that.
Yeah, if you're confident enough to do that, then go ahead and do it. But to make it easier for everyone to do it, then config files are the better way to go.
William Koch asked, do compound clouds regenerate in any way, or do you continually explore to find new ones? I think at the moment they regenerate every so often, but I'm not sure whether that's going to be the final way of doing it.
future, I think we were discussing having bacteria produce certain compounds as well.
Yeah, I don't think the idea is to have compounds appear out of nowhere as they do at the moment. They need to come from somewhere. Whether that's another cell dying, or a bacteria generating it, or a natural resource such as a thermal vent.
Yeah, I think the idea was that organic compounds would be produced by bacteria and inorganic compounds would be produced by hydrothermal vents at the simplest.
Yeah, and a lot of the compound clouds you should be seeing should be coming from other dead microbes. As the game is at the moment, microbes don't die often enough for that to have much of an effect.
Although it is pretty cool when your own microbe dies and it spills all its compounds everywhere.
Yeah.
I love the little, it makes like a little compound soup that's like rainbowy, and it's really nice to look at.
Yeah.
Primordial soup.
Any other questions?
Plants that
Plant-
move.
Plants that move. I remember that being a discussion topic a while ago, and nobody really knew enough about it.
What was the topic?
Will plants be able to move?
Well, I guess there are plants inside of our world that can move. They just don't move very quickly because they don't have they aren't exactly evolved correctly to move quickly because they don't have the right muscle cells and they don't have the right they just don't have the right
Plants don't have
traits.
muscle cells. The way that they move, and here on Earth, I think, is they redistribute water around in their bodies, and that's how they're able to move.
Well, yeah, but they don't have the necessary cells is what I'm trying to get at. They don't have the advantages that animals and other eukaryotes, or that they don't have the advantages that animals do, where we do have muscle cells and cells that specialize in allowing us to go around to get nutrients. But I guess if you evolve your organism correctly, maybe like do you guys think it is like have we are chloroplasts like heavy? Do they provide any disadvantage to movement or energy?
The problem with chloroplasts is that they generate very little energy. It's simply not worth an animal having chloroplasts. That, and they're just simply not in our evolutionary history, so we couldn't have them if we wanted to. But I don't think the game doesn't need to define the creature you are as a plant or an animal. If you want to be a creature with chloroplasts, you can. It just won't do you an awful lot of good. If you want to be a plant with legs, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to do that. You might just not have enough energy to do so. And not having a root system to provide you nutrients, again, might have issues. There'll be no hard and fast, you can do this, you can't do this, but some strategies just won't be tenable. They won't make sense.
Well, you could be nocturnal and photosynthesize during the day.
I think minegamer's been pestering us to discuss viruses for quite a while. I feel like we discussed them last time, although I can't remember.
I don't think we did.
Let's
Anyone
get
have
to the
any
other
opinion on
questions first,
viruses? I mean, from a personal perspective, I mean, there might be. I think they'll probably be in the creature stage as things you can catch a virus as a creature, but I don't think there's really any point to putting virus gameplay as such in there.
Viruses aren't necessarily organisms, really. So, considering that we do play as the whole idea of Thrive is playing as a eukaryote organism, I don't think playing as a virus would be possible. Plus, viruses are just too small.
They also don't behave. They don't do anything.
I don't think he means playing as a virus specifically.
Oh, does he mean like
as like a hazard, possibly?
I think we've decided that before, haven't we?
I think the same way that later stages you might have diseases, viruses would be the disease of the microbe stage. Again, it might be a challenge to make it interesting and fun, but
could they possibly just cause random mutations too? Because they do screw with the DNA of microbes.
Yeah,
I think he's proposing them in the cell stage as a danger. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think viruses existed in the time of, we don't know whether they existed in the
viruses
primordial
are just bundles of they're kind of just bundles of DNA or RNA. So I can see them existing back then, but I don't necessarily think that they were as prevalent.
I mean, what's going to make them as adversaries any different to just enemy cells? Why include them?
The way viruses attack microbes is not as a sort of equal in the way another cell would, but as effectively a cloud of particles, the more of which you gather, the more infected you become, and these disrupt your internal processes. So it's sort of an environmental hazard rather than a adversarial one.
What about bacteria? Aren't they? I know there were. I think there were some concepts, or TJ will propose that we should have some kind of harmful bacteria as well. Wouldn't that also do the same thing essentially?
Possibly. We've also considered having bacteria as ways of processing and generating compounds. We could use them either way. I think realistically bacteria should be nearly the same size as your cell, though.
Aren't they a lot smaller?
Bacteria they're very, very small, which is why we've talked about them as clouds.
Bacteria are small, but small on the scale of a mitochondrion. They should be about the same size as a single hex.
Mitochondrion are really, really big bacteria.
Yeah, but not orders of magnitude.
Half the size of them.
Yeah, I don't see it because viruses are the creatures that would be on the scale of clouds. So I guess I see what you're saying. Microbes, I guess, would be like maybe like a little. You could probably see like a little herd of them. Not necessarily a herd, but
yeah, they'd be smaller, but not so small that they're a cloud. So we have a few options what we could use bacteria for, which are more interesting than what we could use viruses for. So maybe we do both.
We have some more questions that have started to stack up. Do we want to get to those?
Yeah, that's good.
So, Coach says, will heat and sunlight be treated as compound clouds or something else?
There won't be clouds as such. They'll be in the environment in specific locations, I guess.
Spots?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Light and heat spots.
They might look similar to compound clouds, but they won't diffuse.
They won't diffuse, and I don't think they'd move either.
Heat would diffuse if there's a particular source.
It would radiate outwards, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It would radiate outwards, but it wouldn't necessarily dissipate like compound clouds.
Yeah. So similar to compound clouds, but not exactly.
It could be interesting to have them as a more static environmental thing. So whereas the compound clouds are moving around all over the place, you could set up shop if you have chloroplasts, you could just settle down in a place with a light spot.
Yeah.
And start producing stuff there and not worry about it disappearing.
Yeah.
What about varying intensities of heat and light, like to a point where maybe that could also be a hazard?
Yeah, there could certainly be places which are too hot. And obviously you'll have night time when there is no light, and if you're reliant on that light, that's a danger.
Cool. Next question. Will there be any multiplayer mode or something like publishing creations as in Spore?
We'd have to get, if we're gonna do like a sort of like a My Spore sort of thing, or like a Sporepedia sort of thing. I think we'd have to like either rent a server or somebody on the team would have to build a server to host all that.
But we do have concepts for this thing called the Thrive Content Library, right? Well, not concepts, but we've discussed it before.
I think the idea has always been that you'll be able to export creatures and mods and possibly scenarios and share them with other people. Whether or not we'll end up hosting some sort of system for doing that, or if you'll have to do it yourselves through forums and emails, depends on a lot of things. Again, seeing as there is no money involved, we can't rent or put up a server for hosting this sort of thing.
And at the same point, Nova Gaming is asking, will the game support cloud backups stuff? And yeah, we can't do that without a server.
Possibly through Steam, if we ever get on Steam, but that's a wholly different question.
Well, they've just changed the greenlight system, haven't they? Now you need to actually pay to be featured, I think.
You need to pay. You need to pay like $1,000 to get into Steam Direct.
Yeah, and seeing as Thrive will be free, Steam might not even be interested in hosting it. Be nothing in it for them.
They will be helping their fellow man, maybe. I don't know. They probably won't care.
If they want to help the fellow man, they can release Half-Life 3.
Nah, Thrive and Half-Life 3 will release simultaneously, I think.
So, you're saying Thrive won't release then?
No,
I'm
it will release. It'll just release with Half-Life 3.
I'm saying both of them are amorphous concepts about the future at some point that nobody really has any idea about.
To answer Don Quixote, your creature can have genitals.
God.
There was quite a bit of conversation about multiplayer in the chat just now. I feel like we discussed this last time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we did.
And it's the same answer every time, really, which is that full-on multiplayer is far too much. So you could have some kind of save file sharing system, or maybe individual stages could be adapted to multiplayer scenarios. But yeah, full-on multiplayer across all these stages, definitely not.
Yeah, it will
Maybe I think we have talked about. I think we have talked about having like a little micro battle thing. You know, like a arena sort of thing for you to fight with your microbes.
And I think that would be quite cool, because currently the game is you versus the world, but we could make it you versus someone else versus the world, and see who does the better job of surviving those conditions. So,
are we talking about doing that simultaneously, actually over the internet, or as a sort of high scores based thing?
potentially simultaneously.
That's not something we can promise. Even that is an incredibly difficult thing to do.
Hmm.
It's not something we could promise. It's just something that we'd like to do.
Yeah, if someone comes along who particularly wants to make that happen, maybe. But adding multiplayer to a game is technically incredibly hard to do. The system of scenarios is something we've mentioned more often, where you create a scenario and see how well, put it on the internet, see how well people do at surviving in that particular scenario, see how they take the challenge, and that might be a way of competing.
Would that kind of be like Spore's adventure?
Galactic Adventures?
Thing? Yeah, that thing.
I'd see it more like Plague Inc.'s scenario creator.
As which game, sorry, Monty?
Plague Inc.'s. It's like this
Possibly,
game where
yeah.
Yeah.
When do you think the game will be in a playable state?
Well, it's playable now.
Maybe they mean something like with a goal.
Your goal will always be to survive and thrive, even now.
I guess if you're asking when there's more interesting gameplay features involved, Then we're going to try and put combat mechanics in at some point over the next few updates, which should make it a lot more interesting. Do some balancing to do everything. Because currently, even though you have all the compound bars showing you how many compounds you have, they're not particularly useful because the process system is still a bit broken. So there's a lot of things that need to be ironed out or added to make gameplay more fun. But we've got the groundwork done, so it's going to happen eventually.
William Coach is asking if we can have creatures of more than 2 sexes. I think that's along the lines of the cast editor that we had planned.
Yeah, because by all technicality, even though a lot of the organisms on planet Earth operate off of X and Y chromosomes, there are plenty of more genders that the organisms on planet Earth take.
So Robo asks, if you decide to commit suicide, how will it be done?
I don't think that's a particularly yeah, probably
Like, will there
shouldn't
be a
answer that
suicide
question.
option in like the
Well, there is actually in the game.
Oh,
guys, come on.
There is actually a button in the game at the moment, but it's hidden, that doesn't do anything, that will eventually kill your cell, because if you get into a situation where you can't pick up any compounds or anything, there's no point continuing in that with that cell. You might as well just switch to another member of your species. So if you press that button, you'll probably just explode. And then that was Narotiza.
we need to put
That was me.
like a nice Death Star explosion sound in there.
The Death Star explosion wouldn't have had a sound.
I guess, I guess.
In space, no one can hear you, kaboom.
Unless the shrapnel is so dense that it creates its own atmosphere.
Prophasy asks, what's the biggest creature you could make? Blue whale big or giraffe big?
I think that depends on the gravity and stuff of your homeworld.
I would also say it depends on the environment you're in. If you're on land, you're not going to be able to make a blue whale-sized creature. But if you're
If the atmosphere is thick enough, maybe.
True. You could also have like a dinosaurs type situation.
Is there anything in particular otherwise we want to talk about, or should we start to bring this to an end at some point soon?
I think how much have we talked about the next release and what our real plans are for it?
I did bring it up at one point, but I don't think you were here when I mentioned it, so not very much.
We mentioned bacteria, and then that's about it.
I know bacteria's next on the list. Hold on, I'll go pull up the release plans, actually.
It says on the wiki, basic agent production, agent environmental diffusion, so that's the agents working like compound clouds and expanding into the environment. Bacteria, an options menu, and some of the minor things. And probably the main thing is going to be optimization, so the stuff that hhyyrylainen was talking about with updating lure.
Yeah, we technically do have microbial biomes in, which is one of the things that was listed for 0.3.4, but over time, sometime we're going to have to implement traveling between biomes.
All that work.
That requires us to have multiple biomes in existence
True.
at the same time first, which is probably going to come after an expansion of the biomes.
Yeah, rescaled organelles.
How will traveling between biomes work? I know I've talked about this a lot before, but how are you going to get to the abyss from like the very surface?
That'll be something you do on an evolutionary timescale, which means it's something you do as part of editing the next generation. I don't know if it'll be
Oh,
possible.
I thought you could travel like microbe wise from like your actual microbe. You can move your microbe.
Don't think it's realistic to swim that kind of distance.
True. But like if you're talking about like how you could, considering the biomes we have, you'd probably go from like shallows to deep ocean to hydrothermal vent to abyss, or abyss to hydrothermal vent.
Yeah. And then maybe some of the biomes are intermediate, so you'll have the edge of the abyss. But actually swimming from one to the next is not realistic. And
Hi, I came back for a second just to say something. The thing about that is that remember, first and foremost, Thrive is there are some details I think we could fudge for the sake of gameplay. This would be one of them, in my opinion. Like being able to actually travel between biomes and on the microbial scale. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Personally, I think that's something which is definitely possible in the later stages. As an animal, you can walk between biomes and fly between them easily. And I don't know if it makes sense to be able to do that at both scales. Or maybe you have much smaller biomes. You can move between your tide pool and the next tide pool.
I guess I do get what you're saying, where considering how the size of the creatures inside the microbial stage, it would be kind of weird.
And also the size of the biomes. If you're looking at the primordial soup, you're talking about oceans. I think the solution gameplay-wise is to have biomes which are at the interface of two biomes. Have patches which are part abyss and part deep ocean, or part sort of shoreline and part beach. Because it'll be interesting gameplay which goes on there, and you can move between the two there, but you can't travel from one biome to the next proper.
That does make sense.
What if like in game you would see your microbe transitioning from one to the other, moving from one biome to another. But what if that's actually representing like the billions of years it would take to actually get there? You know what I mean?
It doesn't make sense with the idea that
Microbes.
Gameplay is supposed to represent the life cycle of your microbe. You're playing for the few days that microbe would live before reproducing. Whereas traveling that kind of distance, possibly thousands of miles, you're talking, I don't know how many years, which is evolutionary time, not gameplay time.
That is a good point. I forgot about that.
People are asking about saving the game. I guess that's just going to be generic game saving way of doing it, because currently the game doesn't really save your game as such. It saves your microbe configuration and how many compounds you have of the different types, and the actual tide pool around you is randomized. I'm not sure whether we're continuing that for the future. Would that be a good idea?
I feel like we should have a proper save system where like it saves where your microbe is, and at least like a tiny bit of the area around you.
Daniel Rodriguez asks, will there be any kind of orders or communications if you are part of a herd? Potentially that depends on how developed you are. If you're a cellular herd, then the way the other cells act is going to have a lot to do with the way they're set to behave, the way they've evolved to behave in a herd. You may not be able to communicate with them early on, but over time you'll be able to evolve ways of communicating and ways of cooperating which are more complicated.
I'm going to go for a minute. I'll be right back.
All right.
I think there are there is the signal agents.
Yeah, but you're not going to have those immediately.
Yeah, but I was just like saying as a later game way of possibly controlling a herd of microbes without. If you got a bonding agent, then you could just form a multicellular organism, which would possibly be better for your species. But you could also just use signal agents and have a horde.
Yeah, which you're going to have a very basic function, so like gather to me or release attack agents or something to that effect. People are talking about whether you should be paying mutation points to move. I don't know what the plan is with mutation points. I'm not sure we're keeping them quite the way they are. But you should, when you evolve, sort of the eventual idea is you'll be shown a map of where your species exists, and you'll be allowed to choose whether you want to play in the area that your species already was, or the area you played in last time, or whether you want to pick a different area where your species also already exists to play there. And the way your species will move is by you adapting your species to be able to exist in new areas so that they can go and colonize that. So there's sort of a metagame of adapting to other environments before you're allowed to go there. Someone else want to talk about transitions to the multicellular stage?
I think the one thing that I've actually been most confused about when it comes to the transition between cellular and multicellular is how the world around you looks, because it's not going to look like you're in the aquatic stage, because even though you have like hundreds of cells, you're still quite small, like very small. And so how exactly would the world be different from the microbe stage, but also be different from the awakening stage where you're, hundreds of thousands of millions of cells?
I think this is the reason we have a multicellular stage, is that period when you are several hundred cells as a sort of colony, long before you're an animal, which is sort of a macroscopic thing you could see. And through the process of that stage, you're gradually going to specialize cells into things which start to resemble organs. You're going to get bigger and bigger. And as you grow to millions of cells, you're going to lose specific control of individuals. So it should be a gradual process of getting bigger, getting more cells, losing sort of micromanagement of those cells, and starting to build automated organs, until eventually you're big enough that you're something you could call a creature. And at that point, you should also have specialized to the point where you have something recognizable as a front and a back, a left and a right, possibly even some sort of head with sensory organs.
Yeah. Do you think your creature, like as a multicellular creature, would, no matter like how you built it, would like look like a sphere almost? Because that's how I've imagined the first multicellular creatures would probably look like. No matter how you evolved your colony to look at, like inside the cell stage, it'd probably look like a sphere.
Not necessarily a sphere, but it'll be something homogeneous. All the cells will be the same. And whether they get clump into a sphere or into a line or into some very generic shape. But you won't have anything which looks like a worm to begin with. Which might be something you expect to have by the end of that stage.
It's just going to be very basic shapes and functions.
Yeah, some sort of fuzzy sphere. Or even a flat disk.
I can imagine it'll also be kind of cool because your creature could probably like be any sort of, like, the shape would be simple, but your creature would still probably have a lot of different abilities depending on how you evolved it. Like if your cells had cilia on them, I'd imagine your creature would be quite hairy by the beginning of the multicellular stage.
Possibly. And those cells would be better adapted to turn into early digestive cells because they can manipulate food and possibly start sort of filter feeding.
Would cilia, do you think cilia could evolve into digits, or would it be flagellum? If that was a thing that could happen.
Digits would be multiple cells. I don't think cilia or flagella could evolve into digits.
Yeah. Well, I was more meaning like as less digits and more as a way for your cell to still manipulate things outside of its body, other than its own position.
Depends on the scale you're talking about. If you're on the hundreds of cells, then flagella might be doing that. But by the time you're manipulating stuff outside in specific ways, maybe you're up to tens of thousands of cells.
Yeah. There's also I wonder what would form neurons inside of like what kind of cell would you have to build to form a neuron?
I think I'm trying to think of the basic creatures which have neurons. Something like a jellyfish is a very primitive example of something which has neurons, and it only has not even 100 of them.
Apparently a ganglion.
Yeah, so that's quite an advanced thing to have, sort of actual cell signaling, and that's going to be a very specialized form of cell, which you would have no reason to have as part of your colony when you started off the multicellular stage.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about from a gameplay standpoint and from an evolutionary standpoint, what organelles, what sort of cell would you have to build to have that specialize into a neuron or into a signaling cell?
Good question. Hang on.
Agent secretors, maybe?
Possibly.
Certainly having agents are a precursor to neurotransmitters.
Yeah, but correct me if my biology is wrong, but don't neurons function off of electrical impulses and not signals being sent? Or like agents?
They use like sodium or something like that.
Yeah, there's a potassium-calcium pathway. That's for signaling along the length of a neuron. The signal gets from one end to the other by an electrical discharge along its cell membrane. But the signal from one neuron to the next between cells is chemical, either through neurotransmitters or something else. And it's their effect on neighboring cells. So the signal sent from a neuron to a muscle cell.
So your creature would probably have to not only develop specific agent secretors, probably in a specific like configuration, but also would have to develop a special kind of agent.
Yeah, but this is not something you're going to be planning ahead. You're not going to be doing this in the microbe stage. You're going to be doing this partway through the multicellular stage.
Yeah, of course. Just like questioning, just like trying to figure out like what your creature would like gameplay wise, how this will all work, because we've got the cell stage quite planned out. We've got it quite padded out for exactly like what we're going to do for it. But even back in the early days of Thrive, I don't think we've ever really conceptualized the transition between cellular and multicellular, or the functions, or like the way you'd play a multicellular organism.
Yeah.
We actually did start a thread about this.
Oh yeah, no, I remember.
Forums. I know that.
I remember that in the Canada forums too, the old development forums, but it's just like hasn't been really there hasn't been a lot of like hardcore thought put into it.
No,
if you catch my.
Yeah, it's something we've intentionally not planned too much of, because we've known that we're gonna be years from starting it. At this point, not as long as it was when we started work on the microbe stage.
Yeah, it's just it feels kind of comfortable having I'm not saying more like late stage, just more like what we would do for transitionally.
Yeah, that's something good to start looking at. There's a couple of other questions come up about that. Crodnu asks, sort of, would those multicellular fingers be pseudopods? There are pseudopods in them. How do I say this? Single cells have pseudopods where they extend parts of their cell membrane out into a sort of tentacle and use that to move themselves around. That's something we've looked at implementing but haven't figured out how to do yet. But certainly in the multicellular stage, you'd start forming structures which could look like fingers on tentacles on a jellyfish, for example.
They wouldn't exactly be like very. They wouldn't have a lot of dexterity to them, but yeah, you could definitely start in the multicellular stage evolving some sort of grasping implement on your organism.
Little nubs.
Yeah.
Or suction.
Even longer tentacles which either create a flow of water for your organism for filter feeding, or which almost harpoon. Jellyfish tentacles physically stick through sort of a harpooning cell to their prey. There's cells in there which shoot out a barb, stick to their prey, and hold on to them while they're being consumed, which is why jellyfish stings hurt so much.
Sorry I haven't been saying much.
No, you're fine.
I think a few of us haven't really been saying much.
It's hard to have a conversation with more than a couple of us at a time.
Yeah. hhyyrylainen's been running the stream diligently for us and hasn't really said much, but then we had that connection issue, so maybe he can't really.
Still on that train of thought, Firefish asks why there needs to be a divide between multicellular and aware. There doesn't really. It's a sort of fuzzy divide between the end multicellular when you're something like a jellyfish, which can't be called aware. It's not conscious in any sense. It's just a colony of cells working together in a very advanced way, to something like perhaps an earthworm, which you could call aware of itself. It's no longer a colony of cells working together. It is one organism functioning by itself. And that's a very fuzzy line.
I guess it would just depend on weirdly enough, on the development of your brain as an organism.
Yeah.
Because like if you're just a bundle of what he said, if you're just like a bundle of if you're just like a bundle of cells with no real neurological definition inside of your creature, then I guess you'd just be multicellular. But once you start developing a brain that can actually like control a majority of your bodily processes, does that seem about right?
Yeah, and it's also in the multicellular, you're going to be designing cells for specific purposes, things which will later become organs. You're going to be designing to some extent your neural network. Whereas when you get to the aware stage proper, you don't want to be worrying about those things anymore. Again, you're removing layers of micromanagement as you progress through the stages.
Crodnu, what do you mean by it'll be like Spore in that way?
Someone's mentioned space stage, and that's their entire message. And as far as I can tell, the only message they posted in the chat, literally just space stage. So maybe they wanted us to talk about the space stage. Not sure what specifically about it, but
Space
Well,
stage.
I guess we could start with the transition. I mean, the space stage starts when you put something beyond the orbit of your moon.
but the space stage suffers most from the problem of we don't really know what's going on with it. So because it's too far in the future.
We only have basics, like the basic of what might happen to transition you into that state.
To all intents and purposes, we are just developing the first stage at the moment.
Yeah. I'm wondering myself how symbiotic relationships would be programmed and formed.
Depends on the style of symbiotic relationship. You can have very loose relationships where one animal happens to produce something which the other one needs, and they don't eat each other over it.
Could you could you guys possibly see like a civilization style diplomacy menu? You know, figuring out which it's not necessarily like you proposing something. It's just like you have to come up with a sort of like a relationship between the two species that would like benefit both. So like you would implement like X species creates X compound, and then say your organism had a calcium emitter, then like your organism would be like, if that species creates X compound, then you use the compound to fuel yourself and create protection for them with your calcium.
That feels a little too hard-coded. I think it would be more likely to be something that just emerges from the system as a whole if we do it right. If we have to start doing things like that.
That's
True.
the ideal, is if you edit your species, if you notice that another species perhaps is short of a particular compound but is a big species which has a defensive advantage to you, you might change your species to produce and release some of that compound to attract them and start a symbiotic relationship that way. How you develop that to the point where you have something as tightly coupled as corals, which are an algae and a invertebrate, I'm not entirely sure, working together and living together and existing only as a paired species, that's going to be a bit more difficult.
Or like humans and gut flora.
Yeah. But there should be ways of changing your species and having the system react to your changes in such a way that other species associate with you more or less. And maybe Autoevo will even find ways in which they can take advantage of that in a way which is advantageous to you.
That's the hope. Also, parasites. I wonder if you would be able to do that without the implementation of Autoevo. So like you could become a parasite for another species. So it wouldn't be Autoevo trying to figure out why exactly, you're like what would be advantageous between the two. It'd just be you doing that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what parasitism looks like in a microbe stage, if it's easily distinguished from predation.
Well, presumably it would be keeping the host alive, but leeching off from it in some way.
Well, we do
Not
have those.
necessarily.
We do have Lampodia, right?
The bioluminescent organelles, maybe. You could start leeching off of the stationary ones with the chloroplasts, and then provide light for them to continue photosynthesis. Maybe.
Maybe like your creature, if they develop like Lampodia, you know, they could stick to the other creature, and then they would like suck nutrients out through the membrane.
Or be carried around by that creature if it's got loads of flagella or something.
True.
Although then why would you evolve a load of lamellipodia instead of flagella? Because it would do the same thing.
Well, maybe you could have like chloroplasts, and then you could also suck out the nutrients. So the creature would move around your little plant, but then you would also at night just vampire leech off them.
Sounds interesting. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun if you can't move yourself. I think we need a discussion thread for this one.
Well, you could go ahead and set one up.
Oh, Prophasy asks, how would weapons like stingers in that work? If you put a stinger on a tail, will it attack like a scorpion?
I guess that makes sense. Although, do we know how movement will be defined for organisms in the aware stage and such?
I don't know. I thought that would be determined. If it wasn't like a leg, then it would be determined by the player. But that's
up until this point, we just kind of, well, not us in particular, but the developers over time have just said it's going to be procedurally generated.
Which doesn't quite makes it does kind of make sense, but not quite.
Certainly, how legs will work is still an unsolved problem. The few of us have been thinking about it over the years, and we're getting closer to a solution.
Yeah, and after that, William Koch asks, how early might domestication begin? Could it even start as early as awakening, like how wolves in a herd in the wild herd deer?
The wolves herd deer?
As
a hunting strategy, the way they sort of
wolves
shape the herd? Or?
Wolves do shape herds, and because wolves aren't quite as fast as bobcats or mountain lions or any other wild cat. So, like, it's sort of like the same thing. Like wolves, they herd their animals because they need to be strategic, and they eat as much as they can when they do make a kill because they need to be strategic. They aren't quite as fast or agile or strong as a wild cat. Whereas a wild cat can live on its own and still eat plenty of food, and thus it only eats what it wants off a corpse, and it doesn't have to herd. So it's
better example, I think, would be like those ants that farm aphids, however you pronounce it.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of some sort of parasite.
It's not really domestic.
I wonder if you could count as early as microbe stage. Honestly, if your species like manages to follow and control another species, would that be counted as domestication?
I think the key to domestication is that you're actually influencing the development of that species by artificially selecting it, by changing it evolutionarily to be better at producing food for you, to be more docile, to be easier to keep. And no animal other than humans has ever done that to another animal, as far as I'm aware.
So I guess you have to wait until the early Stone Age.
Yeah, suddenly wolves might herd deer as a hunting strategy. They might have some sort of strategy about not eating too much of the herd, but that's not domestication. That's just smart hunting.
Well, I mean, you could possibly metagame and just hunt or kill off the weaker ones of the herd, leaving the no, that'd be bad.
That would be more.
Counterintuitive, leaving only the strong ones.
That'd be gameplay, not necessarily like a species acting on its own accord, as of like auto evo.
Yeah, that's also not domestication.
Okay.
There are examples. Seregon mentioned mitochondria and chloroplasts, and many examples of symbiosis, where two species evolve together, they adapt to each other in a way which directs the evolution of both. That's kind of an artificial selection, but it's a very different thing to humans changing the way cows have evolved over the last 10,000 years.
I guess domestication would be more parasitic than symbiotic almost.
Yeah, and also we've not evolved with cows, apart from lactose tolerance, which is an example.
That's just the human body not being able to process other animals' milks.
Yeah, but by and large, we have changed cows without changing significantly ourselves. Pretty much every example of symbiosis, especially things like mitochondria, the species if there's an active species and a passive species, they both change significantly through that relationship.
You know, a good I guess a good example of domestication would be like dogs do evolve naturally, but most, if not all, of the modern species of dog that we know today only came to be in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
So we kind of force evolution very hard, which is domestication. You know, you're kind of speeding up the process to benefit you as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that domestication is a technology.
It really is.
Okay, we're coming up. We've passed 2 hours of streaming now. So, without wishing to stop conversations, we probably should start thinking about ending.
In 2 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was thinking the same thing. Should we say at most 15 more minutes?
Yeah. We need time for a developer debrief afterwards as well.
Yeah, so don't disappear as soon as we go offline.
I'm going to have to get going as of now because I have family coming over and I'm going to have to prepare for them. So, I think we covered a lot of good topics today onto gameplay-wise.
Yeah. I think there's been a few interesting discussions.
Mm. And those will continue on the community forum. Watch this space.
Yep, so I guess I'll see you guys next time.
Right. See ya.
Bye,
See you, Monty. And to the people watching, last chance for questions.
Well, 3Cubed asked one. He was saying that would species be able to adapt to other species' toxins or various others if domesticated over time? Basically tying into that lactose tolerance thing.
Yeah, definitely yes. You will be able to adapt to other species' toxins.
Yeah, I think Moopley had quite a detailed system. Was it Moopley? It might have been TJWell about matching numbers, matching codes of agent creation and resistance or something.
I'm going to see if I can find that.
Yeah, basically it was that agents would get like a randomized number or something like that. I think it was a 6-digit number, and depending on how well it matched up to I think it was other organelles. It would that would affect how effective that agent would be, something like that, right?
Yeah,
Something-
it was something
yeah.
like that. Any other questions? FreeCube says, since the stream is ending soon, should we get a message if Thrive is going to be successful / get past cell stage? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
An estimate of, I guess, when it gets past the cell stage, when we're gonna finish.
As always, no idea. It will happen when it happens. And you can join today and help make that quicker. Shall we wrap up here then? Have we covered everything?
I think so.
I think so.
Alright. Is hhyyrylainen actually still around though? Because he's the only one who can end the stream.
I'm
Oh, I saw his thing flash green, and then it stopped.
Yeah, he's moving around on his screen on the live stream.
Okay.
Alright. Shall we say bye then?
Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching again. See you in the next one.
Thanks for the questions, everyone.
See ya.